Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast. I am your ginger host, Mackenzie, and our Canadian B. Arthur director extraordinaire, John Adams of Canadian Theatre, the Charlie Brown to my Snoopy. Autumn Smith is currently away on a theater contract, so she will be out for a few episodes this season, but she will be back in time for our big 50th episode. And her and I have set up some fun content for you while she is away. And just like we did reviews of Cats, The Prom, we have another film review for you. And to do it with me, I have a wonderful co-host. I am excited to announce he is my friend, as well as a frequent guest on Cup of Hemlock Theater's channel. He is none other than the wonderful Graeme McClelland. Hello, Graeme.
Hello, Mackenzie. So good to be here and excited to be involved in the conversation this episode. Honestly, so looking forward to this.
Yes, exactly. And I can say today we are doing a film review of the Tony Award-winning musical Dear Evan Hansen that was turned into a film produced by Mark Platt, father of our star Ben Platts, and it was directed by Perks of Being a Wallflower director, Stephen Chbosky. Yes. And for those of you who are wondering, like, well, when are they going to do In the Heights? We do have an In the Heights review planned. We will be talking about it at some point. Just that's on the docket, but we felt this one is when we were able to line up first, because Graeme was a wonderful human being, and he actually reached out to us before the movie came out and said, if you guys are going to talk about it and you need someone to kind of join the panel, let me know. And Autumn was like, I can't be there, but you and Graeme should definitely do it. So Graeme, let's first start off with, how did you come to Dear Evan Hansen? Is this a musical you were a big fan of when it came out on Broadway? Were you excited for this movie musical? What are your initial kind of background on this piece?
Well, initially I found it just because I was listening to musicals on Apple Music, like you do. And Dear Evan Hansen was like a suggested, like, if you like this, I don't even remember what I was listening to, but it's like, if you like this, you might like this. So I looked on the page and saw it kind of highlighted You Will Be Found. And so I listened to You Will Be Found. And I'm like, wow, this is a really rousing, like, end of act number. This sounds great. Let's listen to the rest of the show. And it was kind of just, it caught me by surprise. I just kind of stumbled upon it. So I didn't go looking for it. I didn't know that it was, on Broadway in 2017. I didn't look into it. And then when I got the chance to see it when it came to Toronto, where I am living, I of course leapt for it because I'm like, this had a good number, like musical score. I was very happy with the music, lots of toe tappers. So let's go see it. And so I saw it live. And then when I heard there was a movie being made, I was like, all right, let's go see this too. I don't know if you asked my opinion of it yet, but.
Well, I mean, like, you can give your initial, no, let's hold, because we do get into adaptation, and that's where we can talk more about the stage show as well. So let's hold that for a minute. For me, I will say, I came to this through the Tony Awards. This is actually a show my dad knew a little bit more about than I did. And he's like a theater dad. Like, he's all like, he likes to read up on stuff, and he liked Ben Platt's voice. So he was like, yeah, we should definitely let me know when we get to this performance on the Tony Awards. And of course, it was the last one of the night, which is the dead giveaway that it's going to win. And it was pretty much the favored one to win, even though I was really rooting for Come From Away that year. So when Come From Away didn't win, I was quite ticked off. Let's just say I was not happy about that. And then when I read it up on the plot, I was even more upset. I've never seen it live. I've watched some bootlegs. I bought the album once it won the Tony Awards, so I could really kind of give it its fair shake. And I do agree with you. There is some beautiful music in here. Absolutely stunning work. I mean, it's done by the same duo who did like Greatest Showman, La La Land. So they're on a bit of a hot streak. We can say, like, their music is very kind of in the cultural zeitgeist, as it were. they have a very distinct sound. Like the whole you will be found number sounds like, what's that one from Greatest Showman, the big anthem song?
What is that called? This Is Me.
This Is Me. Yes, it sounds like very much like This Is Me.
As soon as I heard that they were the same like the same musical duo who did Greatest Showman and La La Land, I'm like, I hear that. It's very, very apparent.
Yeah. They have a particular sound. So yeah, I mean, let's get into this movie now. So I watched it in a theater. I went out and did see it in a theater.
I also saw it in the theaters.
And so let's get into kind of the first kind of big controversial topic of this piece, which is the casting of our lead, Ben Platt, who won the Tony Award for his performance as Dear Evan Hansen when the musical premiered on Broadway. And there's been quite a lot of talk about him reprising this role now when he is close to 30 years old. When this role is clearly meant for someone who is probably either as an actor, probably in their late teens, early 20s, who looks younger. So Graeme, what did you think of Ben Platt's performance, and do you think it was right to cast him in this role for the film?
Okay, I'm a big fan of casting the originator of the role when you take it from Broadway to film. I love that they did that for the producers. I love that they did that. I'm certainly drawing a blank on
They did it on Rent, the movie Rent, during Chris Columbus.
Yes. So like I'm a big fan of that. However, and like Ben Platt has a great voice, don't get me wrong.
He does.
But I think the problem is that he looked close to 30.
Yes.
And everyone else didn't, other than the parents. Yes. Which I'm like, when it kind of makes it a little creepy when you have your co-star Caitlin Dever. Looking very much like a high school girl, and then you look like
25, I think is how she is. So she's her mid-20s, but she looks much younger. She can play young.
And then you have Ben Platt, who has some maturity to him. It just kind of didn't land. And as for his performance, I was really disappointed because, because I'm trained as an actor as well.
Yes.
So I looked at his physicality. I looked at his delivery. I looked at like everything. And his physicality was so distracting. He was so like, his hand would just like hover there for a bit. And I'm like, what's this? Is it Richard III? And he had like a little hunch. And I'm like, it's a little appropriate that you struck a Richard III look.
Yes.
Like at the same time, I didn't ever view that as Evan Hansen. So like Robert Marcus playing Evan Hansen in Toronto, he was awkward. He was uncomfortable. He was, cripplingly shy. He embodied all of the traits that Evan Hansen has at the beginning. But he was never like, he also like shifted between that. Like I felt like Ben Platt played the same note throughout the movie. He was always awkward. He was always shy. He was always Evan Hansen. And the character, I didn't really see much variation there. Even once everything started turning up in Act 2. Right. He was still so awkward, but that's when things are starting to turn around for him. Anyways, so I wasn't a big fan of Ben Platt's performance. Also, did you think Ben Platt's face looked swollen in the movie? Because there were many shots where I looked, especially I'm thinking about during like his last big number, where he's like having his big like belt moment. And I just was like, it looks like you've eaten something and your face is puffed up.
Oh, I think that's because he's crying. And like your face swells when you cry, and he's crying a lot at the end. I also think that they're trying to give him that youthful cherub face a bit. I don't know how. I think they mentioned something about doing something digitally or doing something to him to make him have a little bit more of that rounder face, because we do associate that with youth. Because they haven't lost the baby fat, as it were. But yeah, I can bridge that into my thought, because I do agree. He didn't look right for the part anymore. For me, I agree with you. I'm all for bringing back the original cast, but I also go, it has to be appropriate. Like Nathan and Matthew Broderick, their roles are ageless.
Yes.
Like they could easily they could do it now and it'd be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Even like I know when in the 90s they were going to try and do a movie musical of Les Mis, directed by Alan Parker, who went on to direct Evita with Madonna. That was his first year was to do Les Mis, and they wanted Colm Wilkinson to do it. And Colm was actually really on the fence about it because he goes, I'm getting up there already to play this role because it's a big lifespan you have to play as Jean Valjean. Yeah, I mean, I honor Colm Wilkinson for considering that as part of the role because it's like watching like that Rent movie they did with Chris Columbus with the original cast. I'm like, you guys are all so old. You're like in your 30s at this point. This is meant to be like people in their early to mid 20s doing this part. And Ben Platt, like, don't get me wrong, I love the fact that we had somebody who was in a lead role who could actually sing the part. Nowadays in like movie musicals, that is a very hard thing to come across, unfortunately. So the fact we actually had someone who could handle those vocals and do it really well, I was great. Thank you for saving my ears for 2 hours. Now, that being said, he was definitely too old, and there are a lot more younger actors who've taken over the role on Broadway. A lot of film and TV actors who have done the role, who would have looked younger in the part. And I think as other reviewers have pointed out, in order to sympathize with Evan and to understand that this is it, that what he does at the beginning anyway, before he fabricates a whole bunch of emails and really kind of builds up the story, but his initial white lie, you need to understand that it's a mistake of youth. You don't, because as a child, you don't fully understand what you're doing. There is that, I don't want to say an excuse for youth, but there's that thing of you are still learning and growing. But when you look old like he does, you're kind of like,
breaks the spell a little.
It breaks the spell. And I mean, if you look at Ben Platt back when he won the Tony, he did look a lot younger.
Yeah, and
it worked.
And I think it works for theater. You can get away with it in theater because
you're further away.
And there's suspension of disbelief. Like it's the same thing with cats. You believe that those are cats moving on stage because we know logically. I know that's a person singing memory. Right. I know that McCavity is not actually a cat. And I could get in a whole tangent on that film, but we won't.
Right? Yeah. And I mean, I know some people are like, well, it worked in Grease and West Side Story. And I'm like, did it really work, or do we just accept that you were casting old people? It's like watching Riverdale, you know, that show, CW show Riverdale, and you see the people and you're like, there was nobody in a high school who had a 6-pack abs like, what's his name? The guy who plays Archie.
No.
Like at least Cole Sprouse looks a little bit like a teenager. He had a bit more of that gawky look to him. But like, yeah, that's the thing I think was missed here, is that now that we do have these younger actors who can do these roles, let's do it. Like, I'm excited for when we have this upcoming remake of West Side Story. Now, the actress who played Maria when she did the role, she was 17 when she did the part. Like, she was perfect age for that character.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of the actors fit that early 20s, late teen age bracket, and they looks like, because I love Russ Tamblyn and Natalie Wood and on that 1961 cast, but they do look old. They look like Ben Platt does. They look like it's just a bit off. So for me, I go, it's not that he was horrible. It's just I do think he was miscast, and that miscasting undercut the character of Dear Evan Hansen and made him less sympathetic.
Yeah, and I get into talking about that in one of your later questions about, you know, I think that largely it's the fault that they get it on film. The reason it didn't work is because it was a film. On a film, there's just less suspension of disbelief. Yeah, but we'll get into that later.
We will exactly, and we'll keep coming back to Ben Platt, but he's not the only one in this movie. They actually got a pretty good A-list cast of people to kind of fill out the community around him. So, Graeme, give us a breakdown of what did you think of the supporting cast? Who gave a standout performance to you?
First of all, I want to say that they really made the movie the Ben Platt show. So the supporting cast was, in my opinion, barely there. They were set pieces. They were okay. I don't think anyone did a horrible job in the supporting cast. I would blame writing more than I would blame performance in some cases. But I think my shout out is going to go to Julianne Moore.
Oh,
because I actually really love the character of Evan's mom. And Evan's mom is
a great character on stage.
She's not in the show that much, and that's kind of like the point. Is she's an absent mother, like she's a single mom. She works a lot. Like, it's really heartbreaking, but at the same time, you understand the creative choice of leaving her out. But then she gets such incredibly powerful numbers. Like
which they cut two of them.
Which they cut two of them, which I will get to that later as well.
Yes, we will.
So big, so small. I'm so happy they didn't cut that one, because that's the number that is, to me, the real tearjerker of this entire show, of this entire very heavy, very at times depressing show.
Yeah,
that is the one that gets me, not because it's depressing, but because there's such a sense of loss, a sense of disconnect, a sense of trying your best and it's still not being enough.
Yeah.
And I think Julianne Moore embodied this kind of out of touch mother so beautifully. I felt for her every step of the way. When she showed up to the Murphys for dinner, I was like, oh,
so killer awkward.
My heart is breaking. Like,
yes,
I think like Julianne Moore is my shout out for like standout performance besides Ben Platt.
Yeah.
I would, give acknowledgement to Amy Adams, but like if I had to pick one, Julianne Moore is definitely my pick.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I went through the whole supporting cast in my notes because I had so much to get out of my brain on this question. So, I mean, first of all, I agree with you. Overall, the supporting cast was great, and as you said, the way they've remade the screenplay, it has become very Ben Platt and Evan Hansen centric, and that did mean we lost some of the meat around the other characters, which is too bad. I mean, Julianne Moore, I really felt she was underused. I mean, that's two of her songs are cut, so that kind of cuts her screen time as Heidi, and it made her character beats feel almost a little bit generically forced, where it's like, oh, I'm at the hospital, oh, Taco Tuesday, another night, like, okay, now I'm mad at you for being with this other family. Like, there were like because we were missing her throughout the piece, it felt like there were steps missed in her character journey that I'm like, I'm missing a step here. I feel like we needed to see even a few more quiet moments of her coming home, like just Evan at the Murphy house and then her just coming home to an empty house. Something like that. It's just a few more of those little moments to build her journey and frustration further. Or her getting a call from the therapist saying Evan's missing his appointments. Because she's right, down in the States, that costs a lot of money for a single parent to put your kid through therapy and get all that medication. Like, I would be pissed too if my kid was piddling that away on me. And I mean, she's not the best singer. And that's why I wonder if that was a reason they cut two of her songs, was because they knew she couldn't vocally get at it. Like she kind of pulled a Meryl Streep in Mamma Mia with her big song, where like Meryl Streep in Mamma Mia was not the best singer, but when she did The Winner Takes It All, she let the emotion of that song carry her through the piece versus belting it like the Broadway actors do. And I felt that was the same thing here, was you could feel that really hurt, raw emotion in her voice, and that's what made that song work for me. So I want to see more of her. I really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got the two friends. So first we have Nick Dodini as Jared. And he has some very funny lines, but he is not a great character at all.
No.
In fact, he is quite cruel. Like, I hated him. Like, he refuses to sign Evan's cast when he asks to sign the cast. And I'm like, you know, your friend has social anxiety issues, and you know that is not easy for him to come out and ask that. And then you do no, we're family friends.
Nick Dodani did a good job playing that role.
Yes.
I blame the writing on
absolutely.
Jared's
It's not his fault. It's the writing.
because
They gave him horrible writing. They didn't give his character a proper journey. And then he goes on and fabricates the lie with Evan.
And in the musical, like on stage, he's much more present.
Is he? Okay.
Yes, he is. Like, they actually, I'll get to it later, but there's a Sincerely Me reprise where Jared wants to kind of like write more emails to kind of like be included in the spotlight.
Oh, interesting.
And Evan is like, no, you have to like stick to the agreed narrative.
Wow.
Like you can't. Like,
there was
Evan,
that.
Evan literally has a line where it's like, you can't just start making things up. And it's like, excuse me? Like, that's such a great moment.
Yes. Where was that in the movie?
And like, there's more connection between the two of them. They actually become friends by the end of the like by the end of the show, or something close to friends.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he actually, Jared's character appears in 2 songs, both of which were cut. Disappear and Good for You.
Yeah.
And now he's only appearing in Sincerely Me.
Yeah.
Which, he's always just supposed to be the supporting role in that anyways. So
yeah. And I mean, for me, I just go, the way they've written him in this movie is he's as bad as Evan, and he doesn't get any type of consequence for being part of the email fabrication, which is like liable. That's liable lawsuit. You fabricated somebody's life. Yeah. And you were a part of that. So for me, it just made me angrier with this character, because I'm like, yes, he has funny lines, but I'm like, I don't like you. You are not a good person. You are quite cruel. You are another form of a bully to Evan.
And also, if I recall correctly, he wasn't gay on stage. Like in the stage musical, he was like, I hooked up with a Brazilian model and she was smoking. But in the movie, he was smoking. So suddenly it's like, okay, so we've made Jared a gay character now.
Yeah, but we don't develop that further.
We don't develop that further. It is a mention. It is thrown away. It's, to me, the exact same problem Loki had, but that's another story. And not only that, but it's like, okay, so we have a gay character, then we completely like cast him aside.
Yeah.
He's not in it. It's not about him. Yeah. And you're right. It's called Dear Evan Hansen. This is the Evan Hansen show.
But even still, like, you build your characters because building the world helps inform your main character.
Yeah, Hedda Gabler would not be Hedda Gabler without all of the people around her.
Exactly. Tony and Maria would not be the characters without the characters of Bernardo, Riff, and Anita. You need strong supporting characters to help back your lead characters. In that scene you described, I'm like, that would be a great scene to see. Because that's because then you actually see the struggle in Jared of wanting to be part of the limelight, wanting to be part of the it.
It gives him some agency. It gives him some motivation, some stakes.
Yes.
At this point, it's like, okay, I'll just do this because you'll pay me.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I still don't know why that thumb drive was sent to him at the end. I'm like, I get the Murphy family. We'll get into her in a minute, Alana. But why Jared got a thumb drive of Connor singing, I'm like, that makes no sense to me. So some weird dramaturgical choices there at the end too. Now for the other friend, which is Amandla Stenberg, who plays Alana Beck. She was okay. She got given a new song to sing, and she did well with the material she was given. I liked the way they kind of reframed her from the opening that we see her in as like the pep rally president. And we see that she was struggling in that moment. I thought that was a great, actually, I think that was one of the better film moments. It actually was smart. But she is such a flawed character who, like Evan, faces no real consequences. I mean, she basically unleashes a mob on a grieving family for her own selfish gain of her own project, her own vanity project, as it were.
In the stage play, it's even worse. And in fact, like, Alana is not a very sympathetic character on stage at all.
Oh, really?
She is just kind of like, the character that they portray is someone who's just not liked. Was one of those like keen students that people didn't like because she was a teacher's pet and was always involved in every club and was kind of like trying desperately to be liked and important and relevant, but just missed the mark. But because now she's involved on the Connor project, because now this has happened, that became her ticket to the top. It became her like, after all these things she's done, that was her thing. And she was not so much of a sympathetic character as much as she was someone annoying.
Okay.
And then eventually she just unleashes the mob on the Murphys because she's like, this is important. Like, this has to be out there. Like, you shared this with me. Like Evan shared the email to save his ass. And then she's like, oh my God, everyone has to see this thing. Evan's like, no, don't share that with anyone. She's like, no, this is already going out. I have to go. Hangs up the video call and just next thing you know, hell is unleashed. Like, She's definitely, and on stage she was played by actually a friend I knew from high school in my dance
Really?
my dance studio, the wonderful Shakira Dixon.
Yes.
And she did it so well. Like she did this part so well, but it's just the movie does the character in a completely different way.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like she uses Evan and Connor for her own gain, and it corrupts the actions of this actual noble cause of this memorial for someone. And it just made me mad watching her as a character. I'm like, no, you're just making me mad. And both of these characters ultimately ended up just making me really angry by the end, because I'm like, there's no consequence, there's no confrontation scene for these people to face their actions. It's literally like Evan and Connor don't have any type of fight over those emails at the end once it's out. There's no consequence for Alana for unleashing a hate mob on a family who didn't deserve that whatsoever. Like it just there's just no consequence for this, and we'll get into more of that, because that's the bigger problem with the story in general, is nobody faces any consequences.
Yes.
But
and
yeah,
Anonymous Ones is also just to me a complete rehash of Waving Through a Window.
Basically, yes.
It serves the same function.
Yeah.
They use the same staging.
Yeah.
And it's the same song again. I'm like, yeah, okay. Between the two new songs, Anonymous Ones is the catchier one. I like that better. But was this necessary? No. Did they want to make a statement with the character, like representing someone who struggles with mental health, takes medication, which is, I think that's a good thing to do with the character. You're utilizing the character more than just making her the annoying teacher's pet. But I don't know if it was well executing. I feel like if you want to include that, she needs to be much more central to the story. Yeah. But that's even still, if you want to write a story that's exclusively about someone struggling with mental health and taking medication, you risk making a problem play where the whole story revolves around this character taking meds, which
I'm Next sure to Normal.
Oh my God. So just quick side tangent, but when I was in a show, one of the younger actors was like, I loved Next to Normal until I heard Dear Evan Hansen. And then ever since then, Dear Evan Hansen is just a better show. And I'm like, excuse me? No, okay. No. One of them is a woman struggling with mental health and the impact it has on her family.
And it doesn't end happily. It's an honest ending.
So one of them, great show. The other one, teenage boy profiting off of a kid's suicide.
Yeah.
These are not the same show. And if you say Dear Evan Hansen is inspiring, I'll be like, have you watched it?
Yeah. Have you actually understood what the story is about?
Yeah. I mean, I know that You Will Be Found is supposed to be this rousing number, and we'll get to that. I'm going to save that point. But
Okay. We will save that point. But for my last bit, the shout outs for me go to the Murphy family, who were the solid grounding piece of this show. I mean, you have Amy Adams, Caitlin Deaver, and Danny Apino, who, while limited in what they could do with their stuff, did so much. I was begging just for more scenes of their life and seeing their journey. I was like, can we just have a movie about them and their story and cut everybody else out? Like, go away. Because like that's the fascinating story. In that big fight scene they have when everything is hitting the fan, it was just so raw and real. Like you felt everybody's pain in that moment. It was I almost had to. It made me almost feel sick watching it, because I was like, it was just so destructively sad to see this family who's come so far in their grieving process now go back to square one, because their path they were on was a lie, and they have to go back and rebuild their grieving process again on the truth. Like Amy Adams's desperation for wanting the good, because as a mom, as a parent, you want to believe that no, your child wasn't a shit. Your child actually did have good qualities. And she's right. Connor, when we actually get to see who the real Connor is, very briefly, like the fact he could play guitar, he read all these interesting books. Like he was somebody who clearly was struggling. And she's a mom who's always trying to do the best she could. She was always trying to find that next to normal, which is that. And it's so heartbreaking. Like that first dinner party scene where like Evan mentions the orchard, and it's like somebody finding like a floating piece of deck from a sinking ship, and that's their life raft now. That's their one hope to hold on to before they go underwater. And just the way Amy Adams played the facade of upper class mom who's perfectly put together, who does yoga and gluten-free shit, and then she's also someone who's literally breaking on the inside all the time, like just on that verge of snapping, and the anger and pain you see actually sitting at the table when she just says, "You should go now," to Evan. It's like
that was such a like capstone moment in the movie, like because she was holding it all back and was trying so hard to keep it together, and I could tell every moment of that performance.
Yeah, it was so good. And then like Danny Pino, who was the most undercut out of the film because they cut his one song, the Glove song, which I think I would have loved to see an adaptation of that song. We'll get into that song in a bit. But like even him and his journey in this piece was really fascinating to me, and I'm like, I want more of your story. Like as a stepfather coming into a family whose child, the child who's struggling with all types of mental health issues is never easy. But the fact that he goes, I tried to love him, and I'm like, I do believe he did love Connor as best he could. I full on believe that man really did see Connor as a son, and really did have a connect, and really did try to make a connection, even though they keep saying he doesn't. I'm like, no, he did. It's just, it's hard to connect to kids, and it is hard. It's not an easy thing to be a parent and connect to your child all the time. It's not an easy journey for that. Like everybody thinks, oh, when I'm a parent, my child and I will connect. It's like, no, as a parent, you have to work with the child, and sometimes no matter how hard you work, it doesn't work. There's just some friction that's there, but you keep trying and you keep working. And I think that's what his character was. He was trying, and you see that he is broken because he feels like a failure. He feels like a failure of a person for not being able to bridge that. And it's hard. It's so good. But my really shout out goes to Caitlin Dever as Zoe. Like she was the best at charting her character's journey from point A to point Z and all in between. Like you see her go from anger to her heart softening toward Evan to then being angry again and hurt. And her hurts were different. When she's hurt because of the lie, it's a different hurt from when she's grieving for her brother, who she's mad at, and you can see that her anger is her wall she's putting up to help restrain her emotion. She goes, well, if I'm angry at my brother all the time, then I don't have to properly grieve him. Like it was such a wonderful performance that she gave. And yeah, like just a solid performance by those three. Like they really were a great trio of characters that I just full on had my heart go out to them for.
Absolutely.
Like the whole dinner scene where they're wanting to give Connor's college tuition, and Heidi takes it the wrong way. Like, no, Heidi, they're trying to be nice. They're not trying to poo-poo you and say like you need a handout. They're trying to show compassion to you through because they think your son is somebody who is good for them and good to them. Yeah, and it's helped them. They are good. Like they are people who are hurting and grieving. Like they're not awful people like you think they are. And yeah, in the scene when everything's hitting the fan with them, it's so painful to watch them go through that because you know that it's a lie, that they were good. They are good people. They are good parents who did try to help their son, and yet they're being attacked by this hate mob.
Yep.
It's painful. It's so sad. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well done to them. Okay, so let's get into Graeme. I think you'll be able to answer this question better than I can because I've never seen it live. But how well did this musical translate from stage to screen?
It didn't. Just flat out, it didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think this was a musical that needed a film adaptation because the thing with film is that there's always spectacle associated with it. And it works for some musicals. Les Mis definitely appreciates the grandiose scale. Phantom, big, Cats even, like big spectacle. I know, like that was a steaming dumpster fire, but like there are musicals of a certain vintage especially, but you know, there are musicals, Sound of Music, Wicked. Like the fact we don't have a Wicked movie is a crime.
It's coming. They're working on it.
I've heard that before. Okay, like I've heard that since I was a kid. I need this, But like that is a musical that would benefit from the spectacle of film.
Yes.
Evan Hansen is a very personal, character-driven story, and there isn't really much spectacle other than You Will Be Found. That's the only spectacular number.
Right.
And the thing is that this is, because it's about characters communicating and connecting, you have a lot of scenes that work on stage that just don't on film, because in film you want to like take a scene, and I'm gonna reference the producers again, the We Can Do It number. They're traveling through the streets, they're going all around. Bialystok is chasing Bloom. They use the city. But in this, everything is like in a room. So it turned into a lot of scenes of just many shots of Ben Platts singing in a kitchen or in a bedroom, or like it works on stage because there's the magic of actually being in the room with the performer.
Right.
And this, it's just like, okay, now we're just a camera in the room while we sing and have like an intimate moment. The intimacy comes from the magic of live theater, live performance. It doesn't really translate onto film because it doesn't move. It doesn't have a lot of motion. It's not very visual. It's just, you're supposed to listen.
Yeah. And
also on stage, they had all these projections of video calls, and like most of Evan and Alana's interactions were on like a Zoom call type thing.
Cool.
Like, so like her face was projected on a screen, and Evan would be talking to his laptop on like stage, because she wasn't even on stage.
Right.
Or she'd be like off in the corner, a single spotlight, and she's talking on the phone. Like they did a great job of like having because it's about connections, but also showing how social media was disconnecting us, because it creates this artifice of the digital world. And for You Will Be Found, you have all these tweets, you have all these comments, you have all these YouTube like clips, you have all these things covering the stage because he's going viral.
Yes.
And it works, and you get the sense of this anxiety.
Yeah.
But
it didn't work here.
It didn't work here.
Yeah. For me, my first note is this felt similar to what my thoughts on The Prom were, which is this felt like a serious episode of Glee, where I don't think the filmmakers utilized the film medium to its full potential. They did a very straightforward stage to screen cut of this, where it's like, okay, we have a scene in high school, ergo we will go to the high school. We will focus on Ben Platt walking down the hallway. Like, it was a very straightforward job from stage to screen. And and they could have done more with this. Like, one of the things you can't do on stage, because you just don't have the space and capacity to do it, is building silent moments, like moments that you couldn't see on stage because you can't cut away to Heidi at the hospital while Ben Platt is singing somewhere else. Like you can't build those moments or these intercutting moments to build characters up and build their journeys further. And for me, that was really missed here, is that you can build this world out more, because you can get into these characters' headspaces. You can get into this. You can do some wonderful film work with this. You can use the film, the way you shoot things, to tell a different story. Like, there's a lot more you can do that I just don't think they ever went for it, because it was a very straightforward, straight-on job.
And I hated the cuts. It's in some places, like especially waving
tap at the window thing, where it's that quick cut randomly.
I hated that. Absolutely. I'm like, random. Hey, stop.
Yeah.
I think there are better songs that capture anxiety than Waving Through a Window. People love that song, and I'm like, what about Michael in the Bathroom? Yeah. Like, there are better songs that capture anxiety than Waving Through a Window. I was about to swear there. I caught myself.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, for me, I always go, this film never gave you a chance to sit in silence and breathe and reflect on what's going on. Yeah. Like there was never a moment where you just saw the Murphy family or Heidi or Connor or Evan or whoever sitting alone quietly. There was always either something being said, something being sung. There was never a real moment of breath in this. And on film, that is much easier to do than on stage. On stage, there's always needs to be something happening, because or else you think somebody dropped a beat or missed a line. Because yeah, it's tougher. It's tougher to do on stage, and that's what for me. I just go, it didn't quite work. Like they used some montaging, but I'm like, they could have done way more with that to show the real kind of passage of time in this piece. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, did Evan and what's her name, Zoe, go to prom together? When do we hit that point in the story? Like, how long are they together for? Like, how much time is passing here? Like, I get you're trying to show that, hey, he's getting distracted with his relationship and missing on it on the Connor project, but it just, the montage didn't line up right. So
And they did that honestly better on stage as well.
Yeah.
Is there was a real sense of like the Connor project is going, but
Yeah.
Evan is off with Zoe. Like
Yeah.
they even did that, and stage did that better.
Right.
Come on, this should not be a thing. There were so few times where I thought, bringing this show to film was a good idea. There were I could probably count on one.
Yeah, like I can see why you would think as a producer or as an audience member, you would think when you're watching this on stage, being like, yeah, I could see this on film because it's a natural setting. We've seen a lot of high school dramas. The concept, yes, is there, but when you, as you said, when you're doing a musical, it is heightened. You do have to do a little bit more to other. And Glee actually did a pretty good job sometimes when they wanted to heighten that world when somebody had to sing a song in a hallway. They tried doing different things to really kind of make that. Yeah, I mean, Chicago is a great example of taking the real world and mixing it with the theatrical world through that great form of Renee Zellweger's Roxy Hart's imagination of seeing the world through a stage and stardom. Like it's a really smart device. It's a way of making that real world fit better. So yeah, for me, I don't think it translated as well as it could have. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities in there that they just didn't quite hit.
Yeah.
So for me, I go, yeah. All right, next bit, which is this a good adaptation? Did this film solve any of the story issues that have been noted from the stage version? And there's quite a few story problems.
Why don't you take the lead on this one?
All right. No, it's not a good adaptation.
Completely agree.
They undercut Heidi and Cynthia with their choice to cut out their songs. These characters besides the Murphy family and Heidi are not the characters besides the Murphy family and Heidi are not likable. And this wasn't fixed in the translation. They say they changed the ending to make Evan be more accountable, but we really didn't see that. We saw his journey of trying to discover who Connor was and trying to finding that video of Connor to help the Murphy family in their healing. But Evan, Jared, and Elena never face real consequences. Like, he does a nice thing, but there's never any real fallout from that. We still, because the Murphy family chooses to keep the secret for fear of Evan completing suicide himself. Everybody now still believes the lie, except for the most people who know the truth. And even then, he records that one video of like, it was me. But even then, there's no hate storm. There's no angry mob who come after him at school. It's just people giving him side glances in a hallway. And I'm like, but he was already doing that beforehand.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we have come full circle.
Basically. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the film could have done so much more of fleshing out the character of Connor, who, it's noted from the stage version, is never given a real voice. You never get to fully understand who Connor is. And as an audience, that undercuts you, because when you leave, you're still got a very clear picture of Evan's version of Connor in your head. And I should be leaving this story going, I see Evan's version, but I also see who the real Connor was. We get hints of that with this fact they have this new singing scene at rehab, or wherever he's at this group home therapy place. But I'm like, there's so much more you could have done with him. Like, I'd have a quiet moment where Evan goes into his bedroom. And I was looking around, and that's when Amy Adams comes in and starts talking about the bar mitzvahs. Instead of her leading that scene, have Evan be like, I'm going to go to the washroom. He goes upstairs, he finds Connor's bedroom and walks in, and then has a moment where he's looking through things and discovering things about this person. And then have Amy Adams surprise him. That would be such an easy fix to make Connor, that discovery of who Connor was, more better than just always the little snippets we get of him. Like he punched holes in his wall. We hear that he went downtown. Like, we hear little things about him, but we never get that full picture. I'm like, if you're doing a story about somebody who's completed suicide, and then somebody fabricates their life, I still should know who the person was we lost, so I can fully understand the pain of this family. So for me, I just go, no, this is not a good adaptation. Nobody faces their consequences, and their characters are undercut. The supporting cast is undercut by the choices of cutting material.
Also, I'll say I don't go to a musical to get voiceover singing. Like that ending moment where Connor's singing over this montage, I'm like, we have hit a film. Like, this is definitely a film. I wouldn't be surprised if it was some pop star singing the song, because it really didn't feel like a musical theater song.
I don't mind voiceover in musicals. I don't mind if you have somebody singing and then you cut to somebody else. Like, I don't mind that concept, just you have to do it right. Yeah. And they definitely didn't do it right.
And it just, I thought giving Connor a song, it didn't feel like it was driving the plot. It just felt like it felt like a pop song instead of a musical theater song. As you know, musical theater songs start at point A and end in point B.
Yes. Yeah.
But this was we start at point A, we end at point A, and if you listen to the song again, it will still be in point A for the rest of all time.
Yeah.
It's just an experiential song. And it's like, and that's how you want us to remember Connor singing a sad song with his guitar.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that Connor on stage worked better because he was a memory ghost. He showed up a couple of times and he actually talked to, like, he and Evan actually have dialogue. Connor starts the song Disappear.
Right.
Because he shows up and but he's more a manifestation of Evan's fears.
Right.
He's more a manifestation.
So it's kind of like Gabe in Next to Normal.
Yes. Like, I like Connor on stage better. And no, I don't feel that Connor necessarily needs a voice, like needs his own song, because at least not at the end.
Yeah.
Because we've kind of not seen him the entire show, and we kind of don't, like, part of the whole story is that Evan has appropriated Connor's voice. The only reason he's in Sincerely Me is because Evan is writing Connor's voice.
Yeah.
So like, he's straight up like, Evan Hansen is a deplorable character, folks who are listening. Evan Hansen is not someone you should emulate. Evan Hansen is a horrible character.
Yeah.
And the new ending didn't add anything to it, and they suddenly made it so Evan was singing Connor's song at the end instead of a rehash of For Forever or a reprise, which I thought For Forever was a much better song to end the show on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, speaking of songs, let's get into what song do we think was best performed?
It's a very tough one for me because I could, I like So Big, So Small.
Yes.
But I agree with you that it was more of an emotional piece rather than these are stellar vocals.
Yeah.
I have to say the song I had the most fun with is the exact same song I love the best from the stage musical, which is Sincerely Me.
It is a fun stage number.
I thought,
because I'm like, I shouldn't be toe tapping to you fabricating this person's voice. Like, it's a villain song. It is a full-on villain song that you are, because I should not be enjoying you taking away this person's identity.
Yes, and but I love it at the same time because I love all villain songs. Like, I could, if I had any capacity to sing, I would just do a concert of villain songs and that'd be a great
concert. They have some fantastic songs.
You'll Be Back. Like,
you'll be back.
So I really like. Now, I don't think it was a perfect number. I think that the choreography was a little janky. I thought that it looked a little robotic or weird at times. It could have been a little more
that, though, because this is a fabrication. It is a bit of a hokey way to go about it, where it's like we're not making a real person. We are making a caricature of Connor. So I'm okay with them doing box steps and being a little. For people who are watching. They can't see me, or people listening, they can't see me, but I just did a bit of a hokey cowboy shake the arm dance. So for me, I was like, that made sense the way they choreographed that. And I mean, the physical comedy with Jared is always great. Like the whole when they bump him out of the way on the go-kart or they're doing box stepping at the movie theater. I'm like, yeah, that because once again, you're fabricating, Connor. You're making up something. It's very theatrical what they're doing.
Yeah, so, and I think that's one of the moments that I'm like,
mm-hmm.
that's more or less how I would do this number as well if I were directing. Yeah. Like, I definitely didn't like how they did Waving Through a Window. I would have done it differently. I wouldn't have cut. Yes. Does anybody have a map? I would.
That's my note too. Don't worry, we'll get to that.
But I have a note for every song that was cut. But like, I wouldn't have cut that. I would have gotten Evan to school and then started Waving Through a Window and have him in the middle of the hall, people going past him, no one's noticing him. Suddenly, snap, everyone's gone. Evan is alone. Cue the music.
Yeah.
Like, and then we start like he is alone, and maybe then we start bringing people in. But we start with it is the big I Want song.
Yes.
Kind of.
Yes.
So it's not an opening number. It is not. It is not an establishing shot. It is an It is an I Want number, more or less.
Yeah.
But yeah. So my best performed song, Sincerely Me.
Okay, mine was Requiem.
Okay.
I love that song. It moves me every time I listen to it, because each of these characters each of the Murphy family are going through this grieving process. And you see them reacting differently in this moment. Like Zoe is contemplating, should I accept the lie that I know isn't true about who my brother was? He was not a saint. He was not this goody two-shoes loving person. He tried to punch down my door. Like she's very angry and hurt. And so the fact that Zoe is struggling with this, but then you also have Larry. It's Larry, right? Who's the stepdad?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's doing the whole, like his whole thing is like, I tried to give you things, but it didn't work. I failed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm angry at you for, instead of coming to me and asking for help, you completed suicide instead. You didn't give me a chance to do what a father should do. And then you have Amy Adams in his bedroom reading these emails, and you see her almost like, I don't want to say gleeful, but like it's her on that life raft again. She's getting herself more on that life raft. She's anchoring herself more to this lie. Like it was just such a great, well choreographed montagey song that you see these people all getting caught up in this moment that Evan's not giving them the evidence for this lie and what that does to them. And the pain. It's the one moment where we actually do get to really understand the pain of this grief this family's going through who's lost a child.
Yeah, I think my only criticism of that number, because I agree with everything you said, and it's a great number, and I loved Zoe's big, belt moment of
when she's driving in the car.
That was, I'm like, yes, that is exactly how I would have done that if I were directing.
Yeah.
And
great
the
symbolism
end of the song, coming home in the middle of the night and kind of like that, because the song kind of goes into like a much slower, sadder moment after that. I like the whole image of like coming home late and like creeping through the house. I didn't always like the cuts. I thought it sometimes got a little 90s music video with the like faces fading out, and it's difficult because like on stage you have Larry in his office, Cynthia in like sitting on the bed, and then Zoe. Like you have them three people on stage, and it's like an ensemble number.
Right.
So like it's easier on stage, but I think the cutting could have been a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, it wasn't perfectly edited, but I think the performances in that song carried me through it enough where I'm like, I can look past some of the janky editing that was done, and I can instead look at what the piece is doing. And the fact that she's driving the car and it's careening. Oh, it's really representing her. She's driving toward a precipice, a cliff, and she's having to make the choice of, do I accept this lie or do I not? And ultimately, she stops up before she drives off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not till she gets home that she starts reading the email that she starts to accept the lie. It's great. It's very well symbolized there in that moment. Yeah. Good. So good. Okay, so Graeme, what did you think about the song You Will Be Fine? Because we just talked about our favorite songs, but you brought up that this song maybe not hit the mark, and maybe it's the worst offender for not hitting the mark.
So You Will Be Found is what my original window into the show. And listening to it in isolation, it is a very rousing and inspiring number because it talks about something that all of us have experienced, which is this sense that we are alone. Yeah. And saying that you will be found, like everyone wants to hear that. And it's true. It does its job its function in the show is to kind of create a stir and get people interested. I thought that the film kind of milked this scene a little bit, where we kind of took a little
too hokey with all the video stuff. Like it felt like did you ever see The Prom on Netflix?
Yes.
There's the scene at the end when what's her name makes the video.
Unruly Heart.
Yes, it felt like that. It felt like a blatant copy of the way they filmed Unruly Heart. And I'm like, I've seen this before, and it didn't work then, and it doesn't work now. It feels hokey.
Now on stage, I definitely they definitely do something similar,
right? In
that they have all these other voices coming in, all these other like you see tweets, you see comments.
See, that's cool because it's cacophonous on stage.
Yes, and on stage it works. It's cacophonous, and you just. But the thing is that while this is happening, there's this pit of dread in you that you're like, oh,
this will not end well.
This cannot end well. Evan is digging his own grave right now because he's suddenly gone from telling his lie to a handful of people to 16,000 and counting. He's suddenly become this viral internet sensation, and now suddenly that takes the stakes that we've established in Disappear, one of the cut songs, and we've jacked them up to 10, like through the ceiling, actually, like to 100. Yeah. And you're just like, oh my God, like as the act is coming to a close, you kind of want to come back and see act 2 because you're like, oh my God, Evan just became famous. Like he became internet famous.
What's he going to do?
For a lie. What is going to happen? Because this cannot last. And also that's the moment where he finally gets Zoe. Like Zoe, like at the end, like they share a kiss or like some moment that says like, oh my God, they're actually a thing. Because what they also didn't do in the film was Evan tries to kiss Zoe during what's that ballad?
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's when they're talking about what did Connor say about her.
If I could tell her. If I could tell her.
Yes, if I could tell her, that's it.
He like on stage, he tries to kiss Zoe, and then Zoe's like, "Okay, that's weird. This is really
almost initiates that kiss too when they're on the couch."
Which to me is the problem because Evan was the one who initiates it because Evan is the one who's crushing after Zoe, not the other way around.
Right.
To her, like he's just someone nice who's giving her an insight on her brother or an insight on her brother. You know, if you want to even like saying that loosely.
Yeah. Quotation marks.
Big quotation marks on that one. So she's kind of distant from him, but then she sees his speech and like that's where she softens.
Right.
It's a big moment and they kind of I was too inspired in the movie. I didn't get a sense that, oh, this is actually something bad.
Yeah,
this is actually something.
Yeah, there is a doom here. We're setting up the fall.
Yeah, so on stage, it definitely worked. In the film, I don't think it did. I agree with you. It was so very hokey. It was so very like, we are going to tell, this is the inspiring number. This is the greatest showman number. This is
the number we'll sing at the Oscars when we get our big Best Picture nomination, which will not happen.
Which will never happen.
But yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, this number just didn't hit because you're right. I should feel dread watching this song. I didn't feel dread. I felt more sadness for Evan when he's trying to do the speech and he's getting bullied and ridiculed, and because my heart broke for him that moment. I'm like, you can like Ben Platts did a really good job in that scene of that awkward handshaking terror that is on his face in this moment. And
that was also something that was on stage before this number, and I think that scene kind of it did make the jump. It was one of the moments where I'm like, okay, they captured the same energy, but at the same time, like. We milked it a bit. We paused a little too long before the song got started. Like, okay, we can end this. You were about a minute too long on this scene.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. All right, let's head into the next section. All right, cut songs. There were four cut songs in this.
4 cut songs.
Right. So first off, I love it. Does anybody have a map? That should have been the damn opening number.
It should have been, because it's such a good establishing shot. We are establishing the Hansen family and the Murphy family.
It sets up 4 characters in one. It sets up 4 Cynthia, Heidi, Connor, and Evan all get set up right away. I mean, it's such a smart way to do it.
And you even get suggestions of the rest of the Murphy family as well.
Yes, exactly.
It's such a good, it to me is the perfect way to open this show.
Yes, it seems natural to open the show that way.
Yeah,
because why they went the other way makes no sense.
It is a little strange that you give the moms the opening number, because this is about Evan Hansen, and it's about his friends, and the moms really are not. But the thing is, the songs talk about Evan Hansen, even though he's not singing, he still gets talked about enough that I get to understand who Evan is. Yes,
and it's a relatable way to get into the story.
Because, and also, I think it's just relatable for any parents in the audience, because
so relatable.
There is no roadmap for being a parent. No one tells you what to do, and when your teenage son is either being quiet and reclusive like Evan, or acting out and irrational like Connor, does anybody have a map? Does anybody have? Where's the instruction manual? Can I send this back to the factory? My kid is faulty. I need a wet factory reset.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, I just go, when I listen to that song and I was like, wait, they cut this one?
Yeah.
Why? Why?
And it's such a short number. It's not like it's not like one of those 8-minute opening numbers like some shows have, it's not Welcome to the Renaissance. It's not No One Mourns the Wicked that are huge narratives. It's a 2-minute song.
Yeah, really? It's a 2-minute song that sets up 4 characters in one.
Super efficiently.
And actually what it does is it lets you into the look of what is a normal day before a normal day gets thrown sideways. It builds that world better.
Always important. What is a normal day? So we know what abnormal is for the rest of the show.
Exactly.
Next cut song, Disappear.
Right.
This was, I think, a critical flaw. To cut Disappear and add anonymous ones instead, because the anonymous ones filled the hole Disappear left.
Right.
Disappear originally, is Evan talking to Connor's ghost, memory ghost.
Yes.
And people are starting to forget about Connor, and therefore people are starting to forget about Evan again. So what does Evan do? The Connor Project.
Yeah.
I need to keep people thinking.
It makes him more conniving.
And it gives him stakes. It gives him agency. Having Alana be like, this is really important for mental health. But that's not the purpose of this show. Are we really using Dear Evan Hansen to talk about mental health? Because yes, it discusses mental health without a doubt. And I like that at the end of the credits, they had the word of if you or anyone you know is struggling with suicide, please seek help. They had that at the end of the credits. It is a good show to discuss mental health, but in a certain way. It's not the best show to then suddenly make it this is our thesis statement. We are going to say this is how you support teens with mental health issues.
Yeah.
Do not fabricate emails and co-opt someone's suicide for your own benefit. It's just, if you really think about it, not the best show to discuss this topic. Really not.
No.
Disappear.
No.
Also Disappear, it sets up Evan's character for the rest of the show. Because he's motivated and perpetuating this lie, because he's I was invisible. I now got a taste of what it's like to not be invisible. I don't want to lose that. He doesn't want to disappear. Again. So I think cutting that song, massive error.
Massive error. And for me, I think they cut it because in a way to help soften Evan, because Disappear makes Evan more conniving. It makes him more hungry, and not in a nice way, where, as you said, it's him realizing, I'm going to be nothing again. I'm no longer the top story of the day. I'm going back to anonymity, where it's that fear is there. And so he makes this really bad choice to further the lie and further the pain of this Murphy feeling by doing this project under false pretenses. Because he doesn't want to do it for Connor's memory. He has no freaking memory of Connor. He's doing it for his own gain.
Yeah.
And so I feel like they took the song away to make Evan more likable. And I'm that didn't work either. Cutting that song did not make him more likable.
Yeah, and the right
Because
way
we're more complicit.
Yes,
Because his silence is almost worse than him actually coming up with the idea.
And the right way to breaking a glove, that was a song that actually did humanize Evan, that actually did make you feel for him, because that's where you get knowledge of Evan's father before So Big, So Small.
Right.
Like, that's the big number where you get like the picture of what happened with the Hansens.
Right.
But Right Way to Breaking a Glove is actually like, of all the songs, I think that's the one cut song that I'm like, okay, this didn't need to be there.
Yeah. But, for me, okay.
But the scene around Right Way to Breaking a Glove reveals so much, and it shows Evan finally getting a father figure like the one kind he always wanted. And you see it's another aspect of him getting what he wants from the Murphy family. And like, I think that song is a great way to open Act 2 and to be like, oh yeah, like Evan has struggles. You actually kind of feel for him because of that song, because of the scene between Larry and Evan.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I would have loved to see an abridged version of the song. I still keep the baseball scene in Larry's office, but I would love to have seen the song almost act as almost like Larry's eulogy for Connor. Because we never see Connor's funeral. We never get to see that. And we hear that Larry didn't cry at the funeral. And it would have been great to kind of see an abridged version of this song act as almost like a way of eulogizing Connor for a father trying to comprehend and understand their child, their child that they lost.
And there are irrelevant montages galore in this film. Honestly, intercut it with moments of like seeing Connor's funeral, seeing Connor at home, seeing like show he's singing to Evan, but show his relationship with Connor, because Evan, Larry is a kind of surrogate son. In his grieving process, it's like, I have a son who actually wants to listen to me. Oh my God, someone who actually would want to throw a baseball around with me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I think there was a real missed opportunity by cutting that song. And now the one big song that everybody was up in arms about that they cut, which is Good for You, which I'm like, could we not just kept the Heidi verse at least? So she could have sung it at the car? Because I'm like, I think it's a great idea that there's this mounting pressure on Evan through this song. And it's Connor, it's Jared, it's Alana, it's Heidi. They're all compounding him. And like on film, like as a film, you can do so much more with that concept of being in somebody's head. Like Connor being in the library, following him around, talking to him as he's talking to other people. Like so much more you could have done with freaking Good for You. You can't do on stage. And they just totally cut the number. I'm like, seriously? And one of the few numbers that calls him out.
It's such a perfectly chaotic song as well, because Evan has put so many balls in the air. And at this point in the show, he is struggling to maintain the lie. And Good for You has such a perfect sonic energy to support that energy on stage. And when you see it, it is discordant. The lighting is going all crazy. Like Evan is belting out while everyone else sings around him, and like they're just whirling around his head. Like, you could have done so much with it, and you just cut it.
And once again, that's where I'm like, missed opportunity for filmmaking. This is where you can have some fun with the filmmaking. You could have done really good montages. You could have done something to make this a unique moment in the film, but they opted out for it because I'm sure they felt it wasn't realistic. Because they're like, well, if it's not realistic, we can't do it. It's like, you can't do unrealistic things in movie musicals. You just have to direct them properly to make them fit. You just have to be able to do that, and they didn't. So, some good material got lost there for sure. All right, so let's get into the last bit, which is our final thoughts. And is this a movie musical that you would recommend for others to watch?
Okay, folks listening at home, watch this movie if you're feeling too happy. If you need to be taken down a peg and you know what, life is going a little too well for me right now. I need to watch something that's going to make me want to cry. I went to the theaters with a friend to watch this film. She cried pretty much the entire film, like start to finish.
Good for
and there
her.
were like at least 4 times where I'm like, okay, I just like started bawling. I'm like, there are 4 times in the whole thing.
Yeah.
But the whole time I was just sitting there stewing in this like, oh, I feel just bad. I walked out of the theater.
Yeah.
And was just quiet because I was processing, because I was like, oh, what did I just witness?
Yeah.
What did I just watch? The show starts off bad, and then it gets worse.
Yeah.
And then it gets creepy. And then we end on a just sour note of like, well, yeah, this was all a lie. And
nobody's going to pay the price for that.
No. And also, I think that it was a little unrealistic at the beginning because I felt like the kids were a little too
right.
Like I know, like I'm gonna swear now. Kids can be pieces of shit. Like I get it.
They can.
I remember high school. I remember being bullied.
Yeah.
But I recall them being a little more passive aggressive about it rather than outright, just buckshot of honest truth. If there's one thing I remember about teenage years, honest truth were not things people shared. Even if it was like, oh, Connor, like no school shooter aesthetic, I like that. No one would say that in an actual high school. I don't believe it. I believe they're just
too overt. Kids, and kids know they would get detention or whatever for that because teachers are on high alert for that type of thing. Kids are much more subversive in the way they bully.
Now, maybe I'm privileged in that I didn't experience the overt bullying.
Right.
But I don't remember even witnessing. Like, I remember the bullies from my high school. I saw what they did. I saw how they acted around people. I know who they picked on. Yeah. And I never saw them tear into people the way the kids in Evan Hansen's high school did. Like, I didn't, it was too grim right off the go.
Yeah.
And we start off at like this low point, like right down here, and we're just going to go straight through the floor. And eventually we're going to hit the core of the earth, and then we're going to, and that's when you would normally have Good For You to like turn the heat up, but we cut that. So instead we're just going to find the void.
Yeah. So for me, I go, is this a movie I'd recommend? Not really. I like the singing. There is some good performances, but I still find the story to be so problematic that I'm like, I don't see how I could, in good faith or good conscience, whatever you want to call it, promote this film and say, you should go out and watch something like this. I'm like, this story is very problematic. And nowadays when people are so much struggling with anxiety and depression, and I don't think this is the right show people about that at all. I'm more inclined to recommend listening to the album. Like the music is good. So I'm more than happy to say go on Spotify and listen to the music.
Yeah.
Because that is solid. There's
even some of the deleted songs are pretty good. Which like there's if you look, I know it's on Apple Music and probably on Spotify. There is like a deluxe Evan Hansen album, and they have a bunch of songs that were cut or were rewritten.
Right.
And there's some really good ones in there.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think the biggest problem with this is the book in the screenplay because it's a movie. This isn't a good story to be like, go on out and see this. I would more wait to say watch it at home if you're feeling inclined, you want to hear some singing. That's good. I will say though, looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score, which is sitting at 33%, I'm like, that's a little bit too low in my opinion. I would aim for it more like a 55 to 65. Like if Godspell, that god awful movie Godspell, can sit at like 75, and that movie's terrible. And Cats is at 19. I'm like, this isn't as bad as Cats, but it isn't as great as it could be or should be. So I'm like, it's a 50-50. There are elements that work, elements that really don't. So
I would say, to me, 33 is a pretty good score for it. Maybe 40. I couldn't in good faith say 60. It's 6 out of 10 on IMDb. I'm like, that's a bit much.
Maybe a 5. Maybe
a 5. Like, that's much.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because, like, again, a lot of the performances actually, like,
are good.
They're good, but the show is just It's like someone wrote what they think teenagers are like.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're actually doing, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Have you spoken to a teenager recently?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Did you actually go and interview people who have social anxiety and depression, who are in high school, who are going through this? Like, would have been like, I would love to know that creative process.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely this film is one I'm like, watch it at home if you're feeling really inclined to do that. But I would even say, having seen In the Heights, I'm like, I like In the Heights as a film much more than Evan Hansen. But I will say this is definitely a step up from that god awful Cinderella movie musical that just got redone.
I have not even chanced to watch it because I'm like, I don't have the strength. I would watch it only for Idina Menzel. That is all.
Yeah, watch her scenes. Her scenes are good, but I'm like, James Corden's in that one too, and I'm like, seriously, that's the one benefit of this, is that no James Corden in this movie musical. This is the one movie musical we've had so far that doesn't have James Corden in it.
Although it would have been funny to see James Corden play Evan Hansen.
Oh God.
Maybe
he'll do like one of those sidewalk musical things.
I hope so, because honestly, I would love to see him like parody Evan Hansen so hard. Like, it would be easy. Okay, Evan Hansen is already so melodramatic; it's so close to comedy, anyways. Like,
yes,
like when your emotions are that high, all it takes is a little push.
Yeah, a little nudge the other direction, and you're good to go.
It's a little too tragic to ever be truly funny. It would be like, oh, why are we laughing at this? But
yes. Exactly. Well, I mean, we've reached the end of our review. Listeners, viewers on YouTube, let us know what you think. We can't wait to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, everybody, be sure to check out our Patreon page, where Autumn and I do all types of fun stuff, from top 10 lists to theater news, commentary to movie musicals, commentaries. We just did one on West Side Story over the summer. That was a lot of fun. Thank you to Mr. Brody Weld for our wonderful theme music. Check his music out at Father Floses on all listening platforms, including Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple Music. Listen to my favorite track of his, which is Home Decor, where he raps about fatherhood and household furniture during a pandemic. Lots of fun there. Graeme, where can people find and follow you?
You can find me on Instagram at Instagram 999. Yeah, super clever. I know. I'm a writer. Can you tell? And Facebook at Graeme McClelland.
Love it. And you can find me on all social media platforms at Mackenzie Horner. You can follow what I do over at Cup of Hemlock on the Cup of Hemlock pages. Just look up Cup of Hemlock Theater. Check out all the great reviews and interviews Graeme has been on, from Angels in America to
The Deep Blue Sea,
Deep Blue Sea, 12th Night. There's quite a few goodies in there. So be sure to check all that out. And until then, everybody, stay healthy, stay safe. And if you are someone who is having thoughts about completing suicide, please do reach out for help. There are resources out there. We will put some links in the description for you to take a look at, because you are not alone. You are loved. You are cared for. There's somebody here for you who cares about you. So thank you. All right, everybody, stay healthy, stay safe. Thanks.